Captain Lee Do-hyun stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the stars through the large windows. The Harmony's Edge was one of humanity's best exploration ships. It had been traveling through space for 3 months now, looking for new worlds and new friends among the stars. Do-hyun was a calm man with kind eyes. He had been a captain for 12 years, and in all that time he had never fired a weapon in anger. Neither had any other human captain. That was just how humans were now. They talked instead of fighting. They helped instead of hurting. "Captain," called Dr. Park Minji from her station. She was the ship's expert on alien life and cultures. "We're getting close to the Vorthak system. The crystal people are still arguing with the gas clouds." Do-hyun smiled. The Vorthak were beings made of living crystal who lived on rocky planets. The Nebulan Collective were creatures made of gas who lived in space clouds. They had been fighting over who owned a small star system for over 200 years. The Galactic Coalition had asked humans to help solve the problem. "Any word from Ambassador Choi Soo-young?" Do-hyun asked. "She sent a message this morning," Minji replied. "The Coalition Council is very happy with our work. They say we're the best peacekeepers in the galaxy." Commander Kim Hyun-woo walked over from his security station. He was in charge of keeping the ship safe, but his job was very different from old security officers. His weapons were words, not guns. His tools were understanding and patience. "The Vorthak leader wants to meet with us tomorrow," Hyun-woo said. "He sounds angry, but I think he's just scared. His people have been fighting for so long they forgot how to stop." Do-hyun nodded. This was normal for humans. They could see past anger to find the fear or sadness underneath. Other aliens in the galaxy thought this was magic, but humans knew it was just being kind and paying attention. The ship's computer made a soft sound. "Incoming message from Earth," it announced in a gentle voice. The main screen showed Ambassador Choi Soo-young. She was on the space station that orbited Earth, where the human government worked with the Galactic Coalition. She looked tired but happy. "Hello, Do-hyun," she said with a warm smile. "I have good news. The Coalition Council has decided to give you and your crew the Star of Peace Award. It's the highest honor they give to peacekeepers." The bridge crew cheered quietly. They were proud, but humans didn't celebrate too loudly. That might seem rude to other species who were listening. "That's wonderful news," Do-hyun replied. "But we couldn't do this work without the Coalition's support. And without species like the Vorthak and Nebulans who are brave enough to try peace instead of war." This was very human thinking. They always shared credit and never took all the praise for themselves. This had made them many friends among the stars. Dr. Minji pulled up a map on her screen. It showed hundreds of star systems where humans had helped solve problems. Green dots marked successful peace agreements. There were no red dots for wars because humans hadn't fought in any wars for over 300 years. "Look at this," Minji said proudly. "In just the last 10 years, we've helped end 47 conflicts. The Zephyrian trade war, the crystalline succession crisis, the great asteroid dispute. All solved with talking, not fighting." Young Lieutenant Jung Haeun, who was new to the crew, looked amazed. "How did humans get so good at peace?" she asked. Commander Hyun-woo sat down next to her. "It wasn't always this way," he said quietly. "Long ago, humans fought terrible wars on Earth. We almost destroyed ourselves. But we learned from our mistakes. We decided that talking was better than fighting. Understanding was better than hating. Now other species call us to help when they can't solve their own problems," Minji added. "They say humans have a special gift for seeing all sides of an argument." The ship's sensors beeped softly. They were entering the disputed star system. Through the windows, they could see the Vorthak crystal cities floating near a bright star. Further away, the Nebulan gas clouds swirled in beautiful patterns around the outer planets. "Both sides are beautiful in their own way," Do-hyun said. "I wonder why they can't see that about each other." Dr. Minji was already working on her computer. "I've been studying both cultures," she said. "The Vorthak think the Nebulans are too chaotic and unpredictable. The Nebulans think the Vorthak are too rigid and unchanging. But both groups just want to feel safe and have a place to call home." This was classic human thinking. They looked for what people had in common instead of focusing on differences. It had worked on hundreds of worlds across the galaxy. 2 ships approached them. One was a Vorthak vessel that looked like a giant crystal sculpture, all sharp angles and bright lights. The other was a Nebulan ship that seemed to be made of captured starlight and flowing energy. "This is Captain Kristen of the Vorthak Defense Fleet," came a voice that sounded like wind chimes. "We welcome the human peacekeepers." "And this is Cloud Singer Nimbus of the Nebulan Wanderers," said another voice that sounded like a gentle breeze. "We also welcome our human friends. Both species trusted humans completely. In all the years humans had been helping with conflicts, they had never broken a promise or taken sides unfairly. They always kept their word and always worked for everyone's benefit." Do-hyun stood up and activated the communication system. "Thank you both for trusting us with this problem," he said. "We know you've been fighting for a long time, but we also know that both of your people are good and want the same things: safety, homes, and a chance to grow and be happy." Over the next few days, the humans worked their peaceful magic. Dr. Minji met with both groups to understand their cultures better. Commander Hyunwoo helped them see past their anger to the real problems underneath. Captain Do-hyun listened to everyone and helped them find solutions that worked for all. The breakthrough came when Minji discovered something wonderful. The Vorthak crystal beings could create stable platforms in space. The Nebulan gas creatures could provide energy and protection from radiation. If they worked together, they could build amazing things that neither could make alone. "Why fight over one star system?" Do-hyun suggested, "when you could work together to build new homes in a dozen systems?" Within a week, the two species had signed a partnership agreement. They would share the disputed system and work together to explore new ones. The war that had lasted 2 centuries ended with handshakes and happy tears. As the Harmony's Edge prepared to leave, both species gave the humans gifts. The Vorthak created a beautiful crystal sculpture that showed 2 different beings becoming friends. The Nebulans gave them a captured piece of starlight that would glow forever. "Another successful mission," Minji said as they watched the former enemies working together to build their first joint space station. Do-hyun smiled and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, other species were fighting other wars. But humans would keep working, keep talking, keep helping, because that's what humans did best. They brought peace to a galaxy that had forgotten how to find it on its own. The ship turned toward deep space, ready for the next mission. Behind them, 2 species that had been enemies for centuries were learning to be friends. It was just another day in humanity's peaceful expansion across the stars. Captain Shin Dongmin was having a quiet morning on his patrol ship when everything changed. The new Sol was cruising through the outer systems, checking on human colonies and making sure everyone was safe. It was boring work, but Dongmin didn't mind. Boring meant peaceful, and peaceful was good. The ship's computer suddenly made an urgent sound. "Captain, we're receiving a distress signal from Haven's Rest." Dongmin frowned. Haven's Rest was a farming planet with over 2 million people. It grew food for dozens of other worlds. What could be wrong there? "Put the signal through," he ordered. Static filled the bridge, mixed with screaming voices and strange sounds that hurt to hear. Then everything went silent. "That's all we got, Captain," said his communications officer, Lieutenant Han So-young. "The signal just stopped. How long ago was this sent?" 6 hours ago, Dongmin felt a chill. Haven's Rest was only 4 hours away at full speed. If something terrible had happened, they should have gotten help by now. Set course for Haven's Rest. Maximum speed. The new Sol raced through space faster than it had ever gone before. As they got closer to the planet, the crew started noticing strange things. There were no ships in orbit, no communication signals, no lights on the night side of the planet. "Captain," called Dr. Kang Yuna from her science station. She was a quantum physicist who studied space and time. "I'm getting very weird readings from the planet. The numbers don't make sense." "What kind of weird?" Dongmin asked. "It's like parts of the planet aren't there anymore. Not destroyed, just gone." When they finally saw Haven's Rest, the entire crew went silent. The planet looked wrong. Large parts of it were missing, replaced by patches of absolute blackness that seemed to eat light itself. The missing pieces weren't craters or holes. They were just nothing. "Dear God," whispered Dongmin. "What happened here?" Dr. Kang Yuna was working frantically at her instruments. "Captain, these black areas, they're not just empty space. They're places where space and time have been eaten. I don't know how else to explain it." "Are there any survivors?" asked Lieutenant Han. The ship's sensors searched what was left of the planet. Finally, they found one small emergency shelter that was still intact. Inside were 12 people, the only survivors from a world of millions. The rescue team brought the survivors aboard. They were in shock, barely able to speak. Their leader, an old farmer named Park Kyung-soo, kept repeating the same words over and over. "They came from nowhere," he whispered. Big ships that looked like math problems. They didn't shoot lasers or drop bombs. They just erased things, made them stop existing. Dr. Kang Yuna sat with the survivors trying to understand what they had seen. Slowly, a terrible picture emerged. The attackers had arrived without warning. Their ships were huge and geometric, covered in patterns that hurt to look at. When they attacked, they didn't blow things up. They made them disappear completely, leaving behind growing holes in reality itself. They took the children first, Park Kyung-soo said, tears streaming down his face. My grandson was playing in the yard. One moment he was there laughing. The next moment, the spot where he stood was just empty. Not just him. The air, the ground, everything in that space was gone. Admiral Yoon Jae-hwan arrived on the New Seoul 3 days later. He was old, one of the last humans who remembered what war looked like. The government had pulled him out of retirement because nobody else knew how to deal with something like this. Show me everything, he told Captain Dong-min. They watched the recordings from Haven's Rest's defense satellites. The attack had lasted only 20 minutes. The geometric ships had appeared from what looked like holes in space itself. They moved in perfect mathematical patterns, and wherever they went, reality simply stopped existing. I've never seen anything like this, Admiral Yoon said quietly. These aren't weapons. They're something else entirely. Dr. Kang Yuna showed him her measurements. Admiral, these readings are impossible. These ships are somehow eating the fabric of space and time itself. The holes they leave behind are growing larger every hour. Over the next few weeks, more reports came in. A mining station at the edge of human space had simply vanished. A research outpost studying black holes had sent one message: the darkness is coming, and then disappeared forever. Each attack was the same. Geometric ships appearing from nowhere, erasing everything they touched, leaving behind growing holes in reality that swallowed light, matter, and even information. The Galactic Coalition called an emergency meeting. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered to discuss this new threat. They called the attackers void hunters because they seemed to hunt and consume the very substance of the universe. Ambassador Choi Soo-young sat in the Great Assembly Hall, listening to the debates. Many species wanted to try talking to the void hunters. After all, every problem could be solved with communication, right? We should send a diplomatic mission, suggested the Deltan ambassador. Perhaps they're just misunderstood. All conflicts can be resolved through dialogue, added the Centaurian representative. We just need to find the right words. Ambassador Choi wanted to agree. Humans had always believed in peace through understanding, but the evidence was too clear. The void hunters didn't destroy for resources or territory. They consumed reality itself, leaving behind expanding zones of nothingness. With respect, Choi said carefully, I don't think these beings can be reasoned with. They don't seem to want anything we can give them. They just consume. Many species looked shocked. A human arguing against diplomacy? It seemed impossible. Meanwhile, Dr. Kang Yuna was working with scientists from across the galaxy, trying to understand the Void Hunters' technology. What they found was terrifying. They're not from our universe, she explained to a gathering of coalition scientists. They exist in the spaces between realities. When they enter our universe, they bring their own physics with them. That's why our instruments give impossible readings. The attacks were getting worse. Entire star systems were starting to disappear. The holes left behind weren't just empty space. They were zones where the laws of physics stopped working, where matter and energy couldn't exist. Captain Shin Dong-min found himself patrolling larger and larger areas as colonies went silent one by one. Each time his ship arrived to investigate, they found the same thing. Geometric patterns carved into reality, growing patches of nothingness, and maybe a few survivors who could barely speak about what they had seen. The coalition's response was typical. They formed committees to study the problem. They sent diplomatic messages into the void zones. They tried to negotiate with beings that seemed to exist outside normal space and time. Nothing worked. Admiral Yoon Jae-won requested a private meeting with Ambassador Choi. They met in her office on the Coalition space station, looking out at the stars that were slowly disappearing one by one. Soo-young, the old admiral said quietly, I think we need to consider other options. What do you mean? I mean, maybe talking isn't enough this time. Maybe some problems can't be solved with words. Ambassador Choi stared at him. In 300 years, no human had seriously suggested violence as a solution to anything. The idea seemed foreign, almost impossible to consider. But we're peacekeepers, she said. It's who we are. It's what makes us human. Admiral Yoon looked old and tired. Yes, we're peacekeepers. But what do you do when there's no peace left to keep? Outside the window, another star went dark as the Void Hunters claimed another system. The spreading darkness was getting closer to the core worlds, closer to Earth itself. The galaxy was running out of time, and humanity's greatest strength, their commitment to peace, might not be enough to save it. The attack on Concordia Prime changed everything. Captain Lee Do-yun was racing toward the diplomatic hub when the emergency signal started flooding in. 12 major coalition worlds were under attack simultaneously. The Void Hunters had stopped picking off isolated colonies and launched their largest assault yet. Captain, Dr. Park Minji called from the communication station. I'm getting word from the research station at Kepler 442c. They're trying to evacuate, but the Void Hunters are already there. Do-yun's heart sank. Minji had friends at that station, scientists and researchers who had spent years studying ancient alien ruins. Good people who had never hurt anyone. Change course, he ordered. Full speed to Kepler 442c. But they were too late. When the Harmony's Edge arrived at the research station, they found the same horrifying scene they had seen before. Half the station was simply gone, replaced by an expanding zone of absolute nothingness. The other half was breaking apart as the void zone grew larger. Dr. Minji was working desperately at her controls, trying to contact anyone still alive on the station. Finally, she got a weak signal from one of the escape pods. "This is Dr. Lee Sun-hee," came a terrified voice. "The station is gone." Dr. Park tried to establish communication with them. She was standing right next to me when they made her disappear. She was trying to talk to them, trying to understand what they wanted, but they don't want anything. They just consume. The signal cut off as the escape pod's electronics failed. Minji stared at her instruments with tears in her eyes. Her best friend was gone, not killed, not wounded, but completely erased from existence as if she had never been born. "They can't be reasoned with," Minji whispered. "I saw the recordings." She tried every form of communication we know. Mathematical sequences, light patterns, even telepathic contact. They didn't respond. They just took her. Captain Do-yun felt something he had never experienced before. It was a cold, hard anger that seemed to grow from deep inside his chest. For 300 years, humans had solved every problem with understanding and compassion. But what did you do when faced with something that couldn't understand and didn't care? The journey back to Earth was the longest of Do-hyun's life. The reports kept coming in. Concordia Prime was completely gone. The Deltan homeworld had lost its largest city. The Centaurian colonies were sending out desperate calls for help that nobody could answer. The Galactic Coalition was in chaos. Species that had relied on human peacekeeping for centuries were demanding action, but the Coalition Council was paralyzed. Their entire system was built on diplomacy and cooperation. They had no idea how to fight an enemy that existed outside normal reality. When the Harmony's Edge finally reached Earth, Do-hyun expected to find panic and confusion. Instead, he found something that shocked him to his core. The orbital stations around Earth were humming with activity, but not the kind he was used to. Ships were being loaded with equipment he didn't recognize. Personnel in unfamiliar uniforms were moving with military precision. And in the distance, massive structures were emerging from what he had thought were asteroid mining stations. "Captain Do-hyun," came a calm voice over the communication system. "This is General Han Siwoo. Please report to Earth Central Command immediately." Do-hyun had never heard of General Han Siwoo. He had never heard of Earth Central Command either. As far as he knew, Earth didn't have generals or military commands. They had peacekeepers and diplomatic services. The shuttle that picked him up took him deep underground, far beneath the diplomatic towers and cultural centers that most people knew about. The corridors they traveled through were clearly old, but they had been maintained perfectly. And everywhere he looked, Do-hyun saw people in military uniforms carrying weapons he couldn't identify. General Han Siwoo was a small, quiet woman with sharp eyes and gray hair. She looked like someone's grandmother, but when she spoke, there was steel in her voice. "Captain Do-hyun," she said, standing in front of a massive wall display that showed the current Void Hunter attacks. "I imagine you have questions." "I don't understand what this place is," Do-hyun said honestly. I thought Earth didn't have a military anymore. General Han smiled sadly. We never stopped having a military, Captain. We just became very good at hiding it. She pressed a button and the wall display changed to show a map of Earth's solar system. But it wasn't the solar system, Do-Yun knew. Hidden throughout the asteroid belt were massive military installations. What he had thought were scientific research stations were actually weapons development facilities. Even the peaceful cargo ships he saw every day had hidden modifications. 300 years ago, humanity almost destroyed itself with war, General Han explained. We learned from that experience. We became genuinely peaceful people who truly believed in diplomacy and understanding. But we also learned that peace only works when everyone chooses it. So you kept the weapons, Do-Yun said slowly. We kept the weapons, and we kept the knowledge, and we kept people who remembered how to use both just in case. Dr. Moon Tae-hyung entered the room, carrying a tablet filled with technical specifications. He was a military scientist, part of a community that most humans didn't even know existed. Captain, Dr. Moon said, I understand you've seen what the Void Hunters can do. We've been studying them since the first attacks. Their technology operates by forcing our universe to follow their physics instead of our own, but we've developed countermeasures. The display showed weapons that seemed to bend reality itself, gravity bombs that could create stable matter inside void zones, reality anchors that could lock enemy ships in normal spacetime, shields that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. How long have you been working on this? Do-Hyun asked. Since we first detected anomalies at the galaxy's edge 50 years ago, General Han replied. We hoped we would never need these weapons, but hope isn't always enough. Admiral Yoon Jae-won walked into the room and suddenly everything made sense. The old man wasn't just a retired officer. He was the bridge between humanity's peaceful face and its hidden strength. Jae-won has been preparing for this day for decades, General Han said. Training officers, developing strategies, building weapons, all while the rest of humanity worked for peace. But why hide it? Do-Hyun asked. Why not tell everyone? Because peace is better, Admiral Yoon said simply. The humanity that explores the galaxy, that makes friends with alien species, that solves problems with words instead of weapons, that's the real us. That's who we want to be. This, he gestured to the military installations around them. This is just insurance. Captain Lee Na-young entered the briefing room wearing a flight suit covered in patches and insignia that Do-Yun didn't recognize. She was young, but she moved with the confidence of someone who had trained for war her entire life. Captain Do-Hyun, she said with a sharp salute, I'm sorry for your loss. Dr. Park Min-ji was a good person who died trying to do the right thing. Now it's time to make sure her death meant something. General Han activated another display, showing the hidden human fleet that was preparing to launch. Thousands of ships that had been disguised as cargo vessels and research platforms were shedding their peaceful exteriors to reveal the weapons beneath. The galaxy knows us as peacekeepers, General Han said. And we are. But we're also the descendants of a species that fought its way up from a single planet to the stars. When everything we care about is threatened, when talking isn't enough, when peace itself is under attack, that's when the galaxy will see what humanity is really capable of. Do-Hyun looked at the massive war machine that humanity had built in secret. Part of him was horrified that such things existed. But another part of him, the part that had watched Dr. Park Min-ji's friend disappear while trying to make peace, felt a cold satisfaction. What do you need from me? He asked. We need you to do what you do best, Admiral Yoon replied. Keep the coalition together. Help them understand that humanity's capacity for both peace and war is exactly what the galaxy needs right now. Outside, the first ships of humanity's hidden fleet were already launching toward the Void Hunter attack zones. The galaxy was about to learn that the gentle peacekeepers they had relied on for 3 centuries were capable of wrath beyond imagination. The war for the survival of reality itself was about to begin. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as Earth's true nature revealed itself. Fleet Admiral Park Seung-ho stood on the bridge of the massive dreadnought Terra's Wrath, watching as hundreds of ships emerged from hidden bases throughout the solar system. What the galaxy had known as peaceful cargo vessels and research ships were shedding their disguises like butterflies emerging from cocoons. The transformation was breathtaking and terrifying. A simple freight hauler extended massive weapon arrays from its hull. A scientific survey ship unfolded armor plating that gleamed with unknown metals. Even the small patrol craft that had carried diplomats and medical supplies revealed missile pods and energy cannons. "All ships report ready, Admiral," announced Commander Cho Min-jae from the communications station. "The fleet is assembled." Admiral Park looked at the tactical display. 300 ships of war, each one more advanced than anything the Galactic Coalition had ever seen. And this was just the first wave. "Begin jump sequence to Arcturus system," he ordered. "It's time to show these Void Hunters what happens when you threaten humanity's friends." The Arcturus system was under heavy attack when the human fleet arrived. The Void Hunters had deployed their largest force yet, over 50 of their geometric vessels slowly consuming 3 inhabited planets. The local defense fleet was already gone, swallowed by expanding zones of nothingness. Captain Jian Hiejin commanded the dreadnought Righteous Fury, one of humanity's most advanced warships. As they dropped out of hyperspace, she could see the Void Hunter vessels clearly for the first time. They were massive things that seemed to exist partially in normal space and partially somewhere else entirely. "All ships, this is Admiral Park," came the fleet commander's voice. "Today we fight not just for humanity, but for the right of reality itself to exist. Show them what 3 centuries of preparation has built." The first human ship to engage was Captain Kim Jin-won's destroyer Peace Through Strength. It had been disguised as a medical transport for decades, but now its true purpose was revealed. Reality anchor generators along its hull activated, creating a field of stable space-time around one of the Void Hunter vessels. The effect was immediate and devastating. The geometric ship, suddenly locked into normal physics, became solid and vulnerable. The Peace Through Strength fired its main guns, weapons that created controlled singularities to tear through alien armor. The Void Hunter ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light. Across the battlefield, more human ships were engaging with weapons that defied understanding. The cruiser Harmony's Edge used gravity bombs to create pockets of stable matter inside void zones. The battleship Final Diplomacy fired beams of pure reality that forced the alien vessels to exist in normal space-time. Captain John Hiejin watched her tactical display with grim satisfaction. The Void Hunters had never faced anything like this. Their ships were designed to exist outside normal physics, but human weapons forced them to play by the universe's rules. "Target the largest vessel," she ordered. Full spread of reality torpedoes. The Righteous Fury unleashed its most powerful weapons. The reality torpedoes didn't just damage the Void Hunter ship. They rewrote the local physics around it, forcing it to exist completely in normal space-time. Once trapped, the geometric vessel was vulnerable to conventional weapons. The battle lasted only 3 hours. When it was over, every Void Hunter ship was destroyed, and the expanding void zones were collapsing back into normal space. The human fleet hadn't lost a single vessel, but the real shock came from the communications channels. The entire galaxy had been watching. Ambassador Choi Soo-young was monitoring the Coalition's emergency frequency when the messages started pouring in. Species after species was demanding to know how humanity had hidden such advanced military technology. Some were grateful, others were terrified. "The humans lied to us," transmitted the Deltan ambassador. "They pretended to be peaceful while building weapons of war." "How long have they been planning this?" asked the Centaurian representative. "Have we been living next to a military empire this entire time?" Ambassador Choi felt the weight of 3 centuries of deception pressing down on her. How could she explain that humanity's peaceful nature was completely genuine, while also admitting they had built the most powerful military force in galactic history? Captain Lee Do-hyun, now serving as a liaison between the military and diplomatic services, tried to help her find the right words. "The weapons were always there," he explained to a gathering of coalition representatives. "But so was our commitment to peace. We built the ability to wage war so we would never have to use it. Every ship that just saved your world spent decades carrying medical supplies and diplomatic messages." Dr. Moon Tae-hyung presented technical data to the Coalition Science Council. His gravity bombs and reality anchors were based on centuries of theoretical research that had been conducted alongside humanity's peaceful exploration of the galaxy. "We studied these weapons not because we wanted to use them, but because we wanted to understand them," he explained. "Every peaceful contact we made, every diplomatic solution we found, gave us more knowledge about how the universe works. That knowledge let us build defenses against enemies that exist outside normal reality." The revelations kept coming. Earth's asteroid belt contained massive shipyards that could build fleets overnight. The peaceful research stations that studied black holes and quantum mechanics were actually weapons laboratories. Even the diplomatic corps carried hidden military communicators in case war ever became necessary. Colonel Oh Min-ho led ground forces that had trained for centuries without ever expecting to fight. His soldiers were experts at operating in environments where physics didn't work normally, using equipment that could function inside void zones. "We hoped we would never need these skills," he told a gathering of coalition military officers. "But when reality itself is under attack, someone needs to know how to fight back." The galaxy's reaction was mixed. Some species were grateful that humanity had been secretly protecting them. Others felt betrayed by centuries of hidden preparation for war. The peaceful, diplomatic humans they thought they knew had been real, but they coexisted with warriors who had been planning for apocalyptic conflict. Captain Lee Na-young found herself explaining human fighter tactics to coalition pilots who had never seen anything like them. Her ships could exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, attacking from angles that shouldn't exist while protected by shields that bent space-time itself. "It's not magic," she insisted to a group of amazed alien officers. "It's just 300 years of research into how reality works, combined with the determination to protect everything we care about." The most shocking revelation came from Admiral Yoon Jae-hwan during a private meeting with the coalition's military leaders. Every human ship that has ever carried diplomats to peace negotiations was also capable of destroying entire fleets, he admitted. Every medical transport could have been configured as a weapons platform. Every research vessel studying alien cultures was also gathering intelligence about potential threats, but you never use them, said General Corvain of the Altarian Defense Force. "In 3 centuries, you never once used these weapons." "Because we didn't need to," Admiral Yoon replied simply. "Peace worked. Diplomacy worked. Understanding and cooperation worked. The weapons were insurance, nothing more." Fleet Admiral Park returned from the Arcturus battle to find Earth's orbital space filled with coalition ships. Some had come to thank humanity for saving their worlds. Others had come to demand explanations. A few had come with weapons ready, fearing that the peaceful humans they had known were actually a threat in disguise. Captain John Hijin docked her dreadnought at what had appeared to be a civilian space station, but was actually a military command center. As she disembarked, she could see coalition delegates staring at her ship's weapon arrays with mixtures of awe and fear. "How many more secrets are you hiding?" asked Ambassador Corvain during an emergency council session. Ambassador Choi looked around the assembly hall at the hundreds of species that humanity had helped over the centuries. Some looked grateful. Some looked afraid. All of them looked confused. "No more secrets about weapons," she said honestly. "You've seen everything we built. But the most important secret isn't about what we can destroy. It's about who we choose to be." She activated a display showing humanity's history across the galaxy. 3 centuries of peaceful exploration, diplomatic solutions, and genuine friendship with dozens of species. Every peace treaty we signed was real. Every conflict we resolved through dialogue was a genuine success. Every friendship we made was honest. The weapons existed, but we chose not to use them because peace was better. Dr. Kang Yuna, now working with human military scientists, presented her analysis of the Void Hunter technology to the coalition's top researchers. The geometric ships used physics that operated outside normal spacetime, making them nearly impossible to fight with conventional weapons. Only humanity had the theoretical knowledge to build countermeasures, she explained. Not because we're naturally violent, but because we spent centuries studying the fundamental nature of reality while also maintaining our commitment to peace. The debate raged for days. The final battle began at the edge of everything. Supreme Commander Kim Jong-soo stood in the command center deep beneath Earth's surface, watching displays that showed the largest military operation in galactic history. Every human world had contributed ships, weapons, and personnel to a fleet so massive it stretched across entire star systems, but the enemy they faced was even larger. The Void Hunters had revealed their true source, a construct at the galaxy's edge that defied all understanding. It was the size of a small moon, but it seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Around it, space itself was breaking down, creating an expanding zone where reality simply ceased to exist. "Sir, reported Captain Bei Jinwoo from his tactical station. Long-range sensors confirm the construct is consuming space-time at an accelerating rate. At current expansion, it will reach the core worlds in 6 months. Commander Kim nodded grimly. Dr. Yang Heun had calculated that if the construct wasn't stopped, it would eventually consume the entire galaxy, leaving behind nothing but an empty void where millions of civilizations had once existed. "Status report on the reality storm device?" he asked. Dr. Yang looked up from her instruments. She had spent the last year developing humanity's ultimate weapon, a device that could theoretically reverse the Void Hunter's damage and restore normal physics to the consumed areas. "The device is ready," she said quietly, "but deploying it requires getting within 1 kilometer of the construct's core. Nothing we've built can survive that kind of exposure to raw void energy." "Nothing except the Terra's Vengeance," added Captain Bei. The Terra's Vengeance was humanity's most experimental ship. Designed specifically for this mission, its hull was made from materials that existed in multiple dimensions, powered by reactors that could function even when normal physics stopped working. It was less a ship than a mobile piece of stable reality. Across the galaxy, the combined fleet was assembling. Human dreadnoughts flew alongside Deltan crystalline vessels and Centaurian energy ships. Species that had been suspicious of humanity's hidden weapons now depended on those same weapons to save everything they cared about. Fleet Admiral Park Seung-ho commanded the largest division, with over 1,000 human warships and twice as many coalition vessels. Captain Jeon Hyejin's Righteous Fury led the heavy assault group, armed with every reality-bending weapon humanity had developed. But the most important ship was the smallest one. Captain Bei Jinwoo walked through the corridors of the Terra's Vengeance, checking on his crew of volunteers. Every person aboard knew this was a one-way mission. The ship was designed to penetrate the construct's defenses and deploy the reality storm at point-blank range. The chances of survival were essentially zero. "Captain," said his science officer, Dr. Lee Hai-wan, "I've been thinking about what we're about to do. If the reality storm works, it won't just destroy the construct. It will restore all the space-time that the Void Hunters consumed. The lost worlds, the vanished people, everything might come back." Captain Bei nodded. That was the hope. Dr. Yang's calculations suggested that matter and energy consumed by the Void Hunters still existed as quantum echoes. If they could restore normal physics to those areas, the echoes might become real again. The battle began with the largest weapons barrage in galactic history. Human reality anchors fired in perfect synchronization, creating fields of stable space-time around the Void construct. Coalition ships added their firepower, conventional weapons that couldn't damage the construct but could protect the human ships from void energy feedback. The Void Hunters responded with everything they had. Thousands of geometric vessels poured out of the construct, attacking from angles that shouldn't exist. They phased in and out of normal space, appearing inside coalition formations before vanishing again. Captain Jeon Hyejin found herself fighting a battle that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Her ship's weapons fired reality beams that forced enemy vessels into normal space, while her shields bent space-time to deflect attacks that came from directions that didn't exist. "All ships, concentrate fire on Sector 7, she ordered. "Clear a path for the Terra's Vengeance." The human fleet responded with devastating efficiency. Gravity bombs created corridors of stable space through the void fields. Reality torpedoes forced geometric ships into normal physics where they could be destroyed. The weapons that humanity had secretly developed for 3 centuries proved their worth against an enemy that existed outside normal reality, but the cost was enormous. The dreadnought, eternal peace, vanished when its reality anchors failed, consumed by a void field that erased it from existence. The cruiser Harmony's Light sacrificed itself to protect a coalition transport, ramming a Void Hunter vessel at the moment its shields collapsed. Admiral Park watched his fleet taking losses while the Void construct continued to grow. They were winning individual battles but losing the war. For every Void Hunter ship they destroyed, 2 more emerged from the construct, and with each passing hour the zone of nothingness expanded further. "Terra's Vengeance. You are clear for final approach," he transmitted. Captain Bei acknowledged the order and began his ship's death run toward the construct's core. The Terra's Vengeance was designed for this moment, its exotic materials allowing it to exist partially outside normal spacetime. As it approached the construct, reality itself began to break down around it. Hull Integrity Holding reported Dr. Lee Hywen. The multidimensional plating is working. We're maintaining structural coherence even in the void fields. Through the ship's windows, the crew could see things that hurt to look at. The construct's surface was covered in geometric patterns that seemed to move in impossible directions. Space and time twisted around them, creating visual effects that their brains couldn't properly process. 1 kilometer from optimal deployment point, announced the navigation officer. Captain Bay looked around at his crew. These people had volunteered to die so that the galaxy could live. They were following humanity's greatest tradition, sacrificing everything to protect others. Dr. Yang, he said into his communicator, we're in position, activating the reality storm. Back on Earth, Dr. Yang Heian pressed the activation sequence she had spent a year perfecting. The reality storm device aboard the Terra's Vengeance began to charge, drawing power from the ship's multidimensional reactors. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. A wave of pure reality exploded outward from the device, forcing normal physics back into areas where it had been consumed. The void construct, suddenly subject to the laws of space and time, began to tear itself apart under its own impossible mass. It's working, Dr. Yang shouted over the alarms in her laboratory. The quantum echoes are stabilizing. Reality is reasserting itself. Across the galaxy, the zones of nothingness that the Void Hunters had created began to collapse. Space-time rushed back in to fill the voids, and with it came everything that had been consumed. Planets reappeared in their orbits. Space stations materialized from quantum shadows. Even people who had been erased from existence flickered back into reality. The Terra's Vengeance was at the center of the reality storm, its crew watching as the construct dissolved around them. The geometric patterns that had defined the Void Hunters' technology were breaking down, unable to exist in normal space-time. We did it, Captain Bay said quietly as his ship's hull began to break apart under the stress of existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The galaxy is safe. The ship exploded in a flash of light that could be seen across half the galaxy. But the reality storm continued to expand, sweeping away the last traces of void energy and restoring normal physics to everything it touched. The Void Hunters, creatures that could only exist outside normal reality, simply ceased to be as their unnatural physics were replaced by the universe's natural laws. When the battle was over, the galaxy had been saved, but at enormous cost. Captain Lee Do-yun, now Admiral, stood on the observation deck of a space station that had been restored from quantum echoes. Below him, the planet Haven's Rest was green and alive again, its cities rebuilt from the shadows of their former selves. Dr. Park Minji walked up beside him, her existence proof that the reality storm had worked. She had been erased from reality during the attack on the research station, but the quantum echoes of her life had been strong enough to be restored. It's strange, she said quietly. I remember being nothing, not dead, not unconscious, just not existing. And then I remember suddenly existing again. Do-yun nodded. Across the galaxy, millions of people were dealing with the same experience. They had been completely erased from reality, only to be brought back when normal physics was restored to their locations. Was it worth it? Minji asked, looking at the memorial wall that listed the names of everyone who had died in the final battle. All those people who sacrificed themselves to save us? Captain Bay and his crew saved not just the galaxy, but the right of reality itself to exist, Do-yun replied. Without them, everything would have eventually been consumed by nothingness. The galaxy had learned a terrible lesson about the price of peace. Humanity's commitment to diplomacy and understanding remained as strong as ever, but now everyone knew that some threats could only be answered with force.